Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. This is a story about a creepy 60-year-old man. At that time, I, a 20-year-old female, was working at Domino's. One day, I casually mentioned to a coworker about my YouTube channel and asked for suggestions on what type of original character cosplay that I should do next. But suddenly, this creepy guy interjected saying, "Oh, you like to dress up?" Being innocent and not fully understanding his implications, I replied, "Yeah, I do OC cosplay. I have a YouTube channel for it, and I do it for fun." A guy asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I replied that I didn't because I was focusing on myself. Honestly, I didn't have room for a real relationship at that time. Then, he proceeded to ask me out, but I declined, reiterating that I wanted to be single for the time being. He continued to persist, insisting that he could treat me well and offering various reasons to change my mind. At this point, I was starting to feel uneasy. My coworker noticed and called for one of the male drivers to come and help us make pizza. And as soon as the guy saw my coworker, he walked away. However, he soon became a regular. I would refuse his service, and I would ask someone else to deal with him, but he kept trying to talk to me even though I ignored him. The creepy thing is that I don't know how he found out, but he started attending my church. I served on the van, which means that I helped give people rides to church that couldn't on their own. I was the navigator due to not having a full license yet, and this guy would always ride the van when I was serving. When I wasn't serving on the van, he would coincidentally get a lift from a friend. It really felt creepy, but after a while, I started to notice that he wasn't bothering me as much. Probably 2 to 3 months later, I started to wonder if someone else had intervened because he stopped this behavior. He continued to go to church, but he no longer bothered me. I'm a female, and I was 22 years old when this happened. I worked in a grocery store which had been featured in the news. You could see me in the clip and it was clear where I worked. I just came back from vacation and a co-worker told me that some guy had been coming around every day for a week asking for me. When I asked who or why, they told me that they had no idea, but he was around my age and seemed a little off. A few hours passed by, and my coworker came and told me that the guy was back and again asking for me. Let's call him James, I can't remember his name anyway. In the back room, we had a computer, and you could see all the camera footage from all over the store. I looked, and I didn't recognize who James was, but I decided to go ask what he wanted. He was clearly drunk and said that he had seen me on TV and wanted to ask me out. I replied with, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm in a relationship." Even though I was single, I said that I needed to get back to work, and he asked if he should come with me. I was confused and I said that I am working. He then left, but I could see him through the cameras outside the store drinking. A few hours passed by, and he was still waiting for me outside, so I had to use another exit when I left. The next day that I came to work, I saw him waiting for me outside the store. He had a huge smile on his face and walked up to me. He was really shy and didn't say a word until I said hey while passing by to get into the store. He followed me inside and said that he needed to talk. I asked him what was up and he said, how about we go to the movies?" He was really creepy and I replied, I'm sorry, but I have a boyfriend, remember? And as I was walking away, he started following me and asked if he should come help me with my work. No thanks, I replied, and once again, I looked at the camera footage and yet again, he was waiting for me outside. At this point, I started asking a male coworker to escort me safely to the tram every night when my shift ended. I started getting really scared once this had been going on for a while, and he clearly wouldn't leave me alone. I asked my brother if he could drive me to work on his motorcycle and hug me outside my workplace so that it looked like he was my boyfriend, and James would maybe leave me alone, since I know he was somewhere watching and waiting for me to get to work. But it didn't help at all. I started getting messages like, "Is that your boyfriend?" And "He doesn't need to know if we go out." I was confused of how he had gotten my number. I asked all of my coworkers, and a new one said that she had given my number because he had said that he's a friend of mine. I was pissed. At this point, I asked my male coworkers to throw him out if he ever came back, which was a lot. A couple of weeks went by without any harassment, and I finally thought that he had left me alone. Oh boy, was I wrong. I came to work one day, and I was changing in the room, and I heard that we have a new coworker and that it's his first day. I didn't think anything of it, and I proceeded to change my clothes. Once I got out of the changing room, my jaw dropped. Another coworker said, "Hey, this is James." And I looked in horror as she asked me what was wrong. I said, "I know, this is the creep that had been stalking me for weeks." As James smiled, I went and I searched for my boss to ask him what the fuck. And my boss said that he had no idea that this was my stalker and kind of laughed it off as no big deal. I told him either he leaves or I will. He said that I wouldn't have to work the same shift as James and he couldn't fire him. Well, he lied. I had a lot of shifts with him, and wherever I went he followed without saying a word. He just kept following me. I would often have my lunch break by the computer so I could see where he was, and every day I could see him just staring at me, behind me as I ate. This went on for a while. He would text me every day, but at work, he didn't say a thing and just stare. My boss finally understood what a freak James was and that he didn't do any work. He was just stalking, and he started to think of ideas on how to fire him. And one time I noticed James was clearly drunk at work, and I told my boss. He got fired, and this is when the stalking finally stopped. Speaking on behalf of my little sister, because she's paranoid on anything coming back to her. I'm trying to keep it short. She lived at the apartment unit for almost 3 years. Everything about the property is well maintained, and it's a nice community. But she's very concerned about one of the maintenance guys. She's had encounters where in the mornings, despite leaving at odd times to go walk somewhere, she prefers to go in the mornings or on lunch. She will encounter him suddenly as she is leaving the property. This occurs about 8 out of 10 times on average. She vocalized that at first, he was very nice, but she's very independent and doesn't like asking for help and rather figure things out herself. So, when he goes out of his way to open doors for her, and once he offered to drive her to a postal service to drop off a package, she said that from this moment, she did not feel comfortable being anywhere on the complex, and it was just going to be her in a room or even crossing paths. I visited over the winter break and I got to scope out the maintenance guy, And he definitely has an overly nice personality that you just can't trust. No one is ever that nice. It's just not realistic. Well, the final straw was that she's been monitoring her Ring camera and saved videos of him walking by the door. And strange enough, she got a video of him coming up to the door, but then backing off. Almost like you're subconsciously thinking about the people who live in the unit and seem distracted. My sister pleaded a case to the property manager, but from what it sounded like, it was more forward that she seemed safe when doing, which is confronting the maintenance guy, despite the manager vouching that he is not anyone of concern and it's just his personality. I disagreed, insisting that she should be careful and make note of anything strange on the cameras or crossing paths. She told me that she hopes to move out the city by August and told her that if anything comes up, I would make the trip out to visit again. I was either in 7th or 8th grade when this story took place. It was a hot, humid summer in the Midwest, and I lived in one of those true crime story towns. Yeah, you know the type. The nothing bad happens here and everyone knows everyone kind of town. The sun had just started to set when my softball game ended. Everyone was packing up to head home, and my little sister had already been driven home by our father. My coach had offered me a ride, but being the idiot that I am, I was too embarrassed to accept help, and I turned him down. Again, the stupidest decision that I could have ever made. In my head, my home was only across town, which wasn't that far. Besides, I had my bike, and I was already on thin ice when it came to leaving it at other people's houses. So, once most people had left, I packed up my gear and I began riding home. But about 2 blocks in, as I rounded a corner, I noticed a beat-up truck just right behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Small town and all, you know. It wasn't like they were barreling towards me. But after another block, they were still following closely, and something told me that I should take a second look. When I glanced back, alarm bells started ringing. In the car behind me were 2 college-age guys that I didn't recognize. When I say this town was tiny, I mean it. Our population was only about 500, and I was pretty sure that I should have seen these guys at least once. Plus, the nearest college was a 40-minute drive away. But in an attempt to be friendly, I forced a smile as I looked at them. But neither of them smiled back. They didn't even look annoyed at me being in front of them. No, they were staring at me, dead-eyed as if they were fixated. At that time, I was a big fan of true crime, and I had heard once that if you think someone is following you, you can try circling the block, and if they're still there, chances are they're really following you. I didn't have a phone back then, so I couldn't call anyone. Circling the block to calm my nerves seemed like the best option. I tried to rationalize it in my head, thinking, "They're just trying to get home, Star." You're just paranoid, that's all. So I decided to circle the block. I started by taking 2 left turns, maintaining a steady pace and not looking back. My reasoning was that if they didn't know that I knew they were following me, they might not do anything. But even as I did this, I could feel my body shaking, my mind racing for anyone nearby whose house I could go to, someone who might actually answer the door. They kept pace behind me, never speeding up to get ahead of me, never honking or trying to push me out of the way. But as we rounded the 3rd corner, panic really started to sink in. I threw suddenly out the window and started pedaling as fast as I could, trying to make a full circle. And as soon as I sped up, they did too. I had spotted a house that I recognized, but the chances of someone being home and answering? Well, slim to none. It was a block away, and to this day I have never pedaled faster in my life. And as soon as I reached the yard, I practically jumped off my bike, leaving it in the grass. I glanced back at them one last time, and just as I feared, they had stopped at the same spot where I had left my bike. Both of them were staring at me, waiting. I chose the side door instead of the front, hoping that it would be less obvious, but they could still see me. In the last moment of panic, I decided knocking wasn't a good idea. They'd realize that this wasn't my house and someone might not be home. So instead, I flung open the screen door, trying to squeeze myself a little behind the main door to make it look like I was entering, and then I yelled, "I'm home!" hoping that they would hear me. I don't know how, but maybe by some miracle, as soon as I said that, they sped off down the street, and I never saw them again. Once I saw that they had left, I quickly ran around the back of the house, hiding behind the yard for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only about 15 minutes, before leaving my bike there and then walking home, ducking behind trees and houses every time that I hear a car. I made it home safe. I didn't cry, though my heart was pounding 1,000 times per minute. I told my father when I got home. He believed this experience was me making up excuses as to why I didn't bring home my bike. So, I just never reported it. I can only hope that this was a misunderstanding and that they have never tried this again. Before we start the story, I would like to note that the author had changed the name of the places, so people cannot pinpoint her location. And now, on to the story. To preface this, I am currently 19, going on 20. Due to a vindictive teacher, she manipulated the grade so I would have to repeat the 3rd grade because I called another student a brat for crying about wanting her mom. The context behind is irrelevant, but the rundown is, this girl thought because her mom was a teacher, she could cry her way into her mom's class. Her mom was a high school teacher and would almost always cry and cry until she was allowed to go, and her poor mom would be distraught having to leave her class and pick her daughter up because she wanted attention. I ended up snapping and telling the girl that she's in the 3rd grade and is too old to be crying for her mom and disrupting other students leaving. Probably a bit harsh, but you could tell that this girl was spoiled. Now, on to the actual person in question. In August of 2023, I was in my junior year. I went to a trade school in Sumero County for graphic design. A sophomore named James had taken notice that I wouldn't be dropped off at our home school like he was. He offered to drive me home, and I didn't know this kid well. I spoke to him a few times, but other than that, I wasn't buddy-buddy with him. I told him that my mom prefers to meet people before just letting me ride in a random person's car, especially a guy. And with me being 18 at that time, I told him that if we got into a wreck, I would be responsible as the adult in the car. And after that, he didn't really bother me with anything. We still talked, and I could tell that he wasn't neurotypical. It wasn't until my senior year that things got really creepy. We exchanged numbers because I would sometimes help him with homework that he didn't fully understand, and I give him recommendations of horror channels on YouTube, such as Reddit stories, creepypasta readings, or channels that cover disturbing videos like Hannah the Horrible, Nick Crowley, and Nexpo. But within a month, he found my home address. I never told him where I lived, and he got dropped off way earlier than me. The way the homeschool worked was that all the students on the west side of Fontaine going into Sulani would go to one singular middle school and high school, while students from East Fontaine going into Leeway would go to another high school. I never told this kid where I lived, let alone a rough area. I started documenting everything at this point, no matter how big or small. In the next following months, if I would fall asleep on the bus, he would tap my headphones, snap them on my ears, kick my legs, shake me, or call my phone just so I would talk to him. In April, he asked me to go to prom with him, and I tried to tell him multiple times that I wasn't interested, and he tried to manipulate me, to which I just lied to him and told him that I had a family event that day. After that, I said something to the principal of him harassing and shaming people to go to prom, and he gave the most insincere apology ever. He worded it like he was forced to apologize. I get a phone call the next day of him asking if my sister drove a red car and worked at the Sangonomiya coffee house, and I quickly told him no and blocked his number. I went to the administration, coupled with the fact that this kid would call to ask if I went to the Dollar General, went to work, or if I was at home, told me thoughts he had about killing his mom's boyfriend, how he wants to smash his teeth in, smacking his phone against the window, and tried to manipulate me into calling while he was having a panic attack, and then ranted about how my math teacher needed to be gutted because she was overweight and that fat women are ugly and horrible vessels for producing babies. The math teacher was not overweight from poor diet. She has a medical condition that caused the buildup of estrogen. The worst was when he lashed out in anger about him losing his AirPod case and aggressively stomping on his AirPods and literally foaming at the mouth. I went to the principal and liaison after this, only to be unable to talk, and they yelled at me for an hour about how I was being mean to a kid on the spectrum and that my information, my mother's information, and my sister's information is public information. I started having a panic attack and I called my mom, and at this point, I was literally vomiting in the trash can of the conference room. My mother was pissed. My mother told me to call the sheriff's office after I get home, and the sheriff actually went to this kid's house and told him to knock this shit off, or I had every right to file stalking and harassment charges. The 180 Women's Shelter confirmed that what the principal and the liaison did was disgusting and dangerous. And so far, I haven't seen him, and I still have his number blocked. Hopefully, I don't see this little bastard anymore. To James, if you see this post by some chance, stay the fuck away from me and my sister. I hope your future general finds out about this shit. And yeah, that's right. This fucker wants to be in the goddamn army. And should I see him again, I won't hesitate to press charges against him. I don't care if it ruins his life forever. He's a danger to those around him, and potentially himself. Hey there, I just wanted to share my story. I'm keeping all names and ranks out of this because I want to remain anonymous and not lose my job or risk my career even more than it has already been impacted. The worst part of this for me was that it didn't come from an enemy or someone outside of the military, but instead, it came from a fellow soldier. I am proud of my country and being able to serve. However, I am not happy with how this was handled. I was on base and chatting with my friends. We were goofing off because there was nothing to do. One thing about serving is that it's either all hands on deck or there are long boring periods of doing absolutely nothing. I noticed the soldier, let's call him Jack as a random name. He was kinda quiet, one of the types who were quiet and felt like the military was going to bring out the man in him. I called him over to hang out with us. We were playing cards and just messing around. He had sit a little too close for comfort for people, and I didn't think that it was weird. My brother doesn't understand social cues, so I know how to encourage and teach them how to interact with people. It just takes some patience and understanding, and I told him that he was a bit close. He apologized and then moved back a little. He didn't join in the conversation, but he seemed happy to just sit and join in with us. Late that night, I was laying in my bunk relaxing when I noticed a shadow standing over me. It was Jack. I asked him what was up, and I noticed that he was eyeing me up, and I don't care if someone is a little fruity. I had experimented and found it wasn't for me, and I have friends who swing that way too. And after telling him no, he walked off, and after a while I fell asleep. Waking up, I noticed that he was sitting close to me, watching me while I slept and laughing it off. I thought that he was trying to mess with me in a joking way. It was subtle, but wherever I was, on or off base, he would either be there waiting for me or would show up not long after. At one of the local restaurants, I was there with a girl that I was seeing. It was nothing serious really, just a good time. And he then walked over, demanding to know who she was and why I was with her. I told him that I was on a date, and then he stormed off before blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, snap messages, it was endless. I then blocked him and I muted my phone. And from that moment on, he didn't speak to me directly, just watching me from doorways or corners. I asked a friend what I should do about it. I didn't want to look like I couldn't handle things to the higher ups. I love the military, but I wouldn't deny that I still had issues with this type of behavior. My friend didn't really answer me, and the next time that I saw Jack, he had a black eye and wouldn't look at me. No one saw what happened, and I suspected that my friend was responsible, not that he admitted to anything. It was quiet for several months, and Jack didn't show up anywhere I was unless it was official. We didn't speak, but out of the blue, he confronted me, telling me that I didn't need to send my boyfriend to get him. Telling Jack that I didn't know what he was talking about only made him angrier. He yelled at me that I had led him on, and not once did I. The only thing I did was offer him to come join in with us because I thought that he looked lonely. I asked him to calm down, and admittedly, I shouldn't have done that either. He exploded at me, and we ended up fighting. I finally lost it with him. I remember throwing punches and screaming at him to stay away from me, and Jack gave me a creepy smirk in response, and the first time that I ever saw any emotion on his face. Never in my life have I been so patient when it came to dealing with someone. We were separated, and needless to say, we both got into trouble. I told him about the events leading up to the fight. I got skepticism, blame for not shutting it down sooner, and told that it doesn't look good if I wanted to advance through the ranks if I couldn't keep someone in line. This experience made me question my role in the military and whether I was cut out for it. Jack was dishonorably discharged, and let's just say that I got off lightly from his stalking. I'm still in the military, and again, consider it as an honor to serve my country. I hope you enjoyed my story, and I hope that you share it with others. And to everyone who might be able to hear this, thank you for listening. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.